Hello everyone. Welcome to the stream on this Saturday afternoon. I'm so excited to get into today's live stream. Sorry about, no music at the beginning. I forgot to get that prepared, but I think it should be fine. Hello B, how are you doing today? Welcome on in. Yeah, as you guys can tell by the title, today we are doing a live discussion as a continuation of my previous video essay on play. So that essay was about the science behind play, why play is important for a child's development, but also just as crucial for an adult's development as well. And so that is what we're going to be discussing, getting more into. I'm going to be showing some examples of some history or other stories that didn't make it into the final cut of that video. And we're overall just going to be getting deeper into this topic. Kind of think of this live stream as an accessory to that original video. So let me know who has seen the original essay. Let me know below or in the chat. And yeah, that's what we'll be doing today. So once again, thank you guys so much for being here. I do want this to be a discussion, to kind of have more of a discussion live element. So please talk to me in the chat or in the comments if you're watching this back. I will be reading the comments and responding. So I want to hear from you. The whole purpose of doing this sort of style of video is to hear from you. And I hate this like sun ray that's like blocking my face. I apologize. I literally tried to do everything. I closed my blinds, but there is a window up there in the sun, just because the time of day it is hitting exactly on my face. So I'm sorry. That's kind of bothering me. As I keep talking, like I'm hoping it'll kind of go away, but yeah. That's why there's just this beam of light beaming into my eyes. But yeah, we'll make it work. B says, I'm doing well. I tried to watch your video yesterday. Well written, informative, and engaging. Thank you so much. Yeah, so I'm glad you enjoyed that. And I'm excited to be talking more about, the essay today. If you do participate in the chat, please keep in mind that I do have chat rules and I have them listed at the top of the description. So keep it kind, keep it respectful. We're allowed to have differing opinions or we're allowed to disagree, but the biggest thing is just being respectful and kind to everyone. That shouldn't be an issue. Most of y'all are kind and, y'all know how to act, but just, I want to put that disclaimer in the case that we need it. Another way to be engaged is to make clips of this live stream of any moments that you think are impactful or that spoke to you. I'm able to see all of my channel clips, and that also gives me an idea of what might be helpful to repurpose as short form content. That's another way to be engaged as well. The sources are linked in the description if you guys want to follow along with the topics I'll be talking about today. And with that being said, go ahead and leave a like, and we're going to go ahead and get started. Oh, that's okay, B. I think I knew what you were trying to say. And hello, Amy. The beam of light represents the enlightening information talk. Look, I like that perspective. We'll just say that. This is the knowledge just exuding from me. But yes, how are you doing? Thank you so much for being here. We are going to go ahead and get started. All right, so I have let me go ahead and pull chat up on my phone. So I'm gonna put you guys over here. And now, or actually, hold on, let me bring that back up again. And now I'm gonna take you guys over here. There we go. That should be good. That should be good. Oh my god, this beam of light is gonna bother me, but it's okay. We're gonna work with it. We're gonna work with it, y'all. Alrighty, so as we can tell by the title, today we are talking about play inequity and the forgotten form of self-care. Like I said at the beginning, this live discussion is a follow-up to my previous video essay about the importance of play in both childhood and adulthood. The essay went into research about this topic, detailing the harmful effects of play deprivation. We spent some time debunking misconceptions about playfulness being deemed childish. That video also explored some of these sociocultural factors that prohibit children from being able to experience an unrivaled, uninterrupted play state. I use nostalgia as the backdrop of this conversation, given that reboots, remakes, and inner child conversations have been more prevalent in recent years. So this live discussion will be focusing on more factors that kind of prevent us from living in a play state. And we're also going to be talking about how a change in our perception of play, what it is, who it's for, and who it's not for, can have a monumental impact in the way we view ourselves and the way we view the world and how we navigate the world. So here's our agenda today. We're first going to get into a conversation about expanding our perception of play, particularly adult play, how we interpret that as adults. We're going to talk about privilege and inequity, and kind of getting to this topic of who is allowed to play. And last but certainly not least, we're going to talk about how perception impacts our play. So some subtopics that fall under this is gender norms in leisure activities, why is pink for girls and blue for boys, we're going to get into that history, and also imagining a better future through play. And hello, Kachunky, welcome on into the stream. Thank you so much for that super chat, or is it a super sticker? It's a super sticker. Thank you so much, I appreciate that. But yes, if any of these topics intrigue you or think would resonate with anybody you know, please share the link. Share the live stream link with someone you think would benefit from this conversation. So first things first, when we think of the topic of play, there's usually a very specific image that comes to mind. I feel like play is often thought to have a juvenile undertone. I searched play on a stock image service that I use, and these are some of the top images that came up. So some things that I noticed. The first thing is a lot of children. That's not a surprise. We see some pets, some animals, so we typically also associate, play with pets and animals as well. And there's some activities, like we see some sports, like a basketball court here. There's a person skiing on the right. There's some like music, so, play as in playing music or musical instrument. And there's also like a, movie theater here, so there's play in terms of activities, but I definitely think it's more kid and, like pet focused, things kind of related to that. But something I did notice is with searching play and Google Images, there's definitely lacking adults, a lot of adult representation, an exception of like, say, maybe athletes or musicians. And there's also a lack, at least in the service that I used, of seeing people of color, people of different intersectional identities being represented in our depictions of play. But play is so much more than toys and sports. When reflecting, I started to notice that we seem to put play in two buckets, one reserved for kids and another one that is strictly mature or adult. Think of the way that like we perceive a kid play date versus where adults are expected to hang out for fun. For example, like the first thing that I think of are things like bars, brunch, happy hour, clubs, wineries, concerts, some activity where typically alcohol is involved. And as I discussed in the original essay, play is just as crucial for adults. It helps us to mitigate the effects of stress. It increases our resilience and our creativity, as well as our social confidence. Play also helps with our agility and our ability to regulate emotions. This is some of the facts from the research. And as I listed over here, here are some of the benefits of play, or what play is truly about. So we already talked about mitigating stress. We talked about personal fulfillment, health and well-being, both mental and physical. Play is about relaxation and leisure. And last but not least, play is about self-care. So adults partaking in play doesn't just have to be reserved to spending time with kids or partaking in a recreational sport or playing music. There are many ways that adults can be playful that may challenge our biases around play, who it's for, and what it entails. And I added a little thought bubble here because I think our adult perception of play really limits how we view leisure activities for ourselves. Like with this little PSA, drinking, smoking, partying, and sex are not the only ways adults can let loose and have fun. Kentucky says you're welcome. Yeah, it's great to see you. Thank you for coming in. And B says, yes, I wish there were more childlike activities, or I wish more childlike activities were for adults. I went to a cat cafe crafting event recently. It was so much fun. I don't know if that includes play. That definitely includes play. And that's actually a great segue into my next point. And I really want to hone in on this idea that play and the idea of play should not be nostalgic. It shouldn't just be reserved for the past version of ourselves, the child version of ourselves, or it shouldn't be reserved for times in our lives that were simpler, that were better, or that seemed safer, if you remember the definition of nostalgia that we talked about in the previous video. So I want to go into the 8 play personalities that the National Institute for Play discovered in their interviews, in research, and studies that they've conducted. So this website lists these various different ways that these researchers have observed their participants express play. So they divided it into like 8 different categories. So when I actually did my test run of this live stream, I ended up spending a long time reading this. So I'm going to link this in the description if you want to read more thoroughly about each of these individual play personalities. But for the sake of argument today, or the sake of, keeping things a little bit brief because we have a lot to get to, I went ahead and asked AI. I asked Copilot to summarize this webpage. So here's the prompt that I gave it. And we're just going to go through the bullet points. But of course, if you want to read more of this for yourself, please check out the original link in the description. And I read the original link, so I think these quick bullet points that Copilot gave, I feel like still is sufficient to kind of understand the gist of each one. Amy says sound is rough, a little crackly. Oh no, is anybody else experiencing sound issues? Hold on, let me see. It says I have excellent connection, but let me know if anybody else is experiencing issues. But let's go ahead and I'll start reading this, and if I, disappear, you guys can read. So the first play personality is the Joker. So some points about the Joker is they love to make others laugh and enjoy playful antics. The Joker values humor and uses it to connect with others. The second play personality type is the kinesthete. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, but they enjoy physical activities and movement, things like sports, dance, or any activity that involves body in motion. The next one is the Explorer. So the Explorer seeks out new experiences and adventures. They love to travel, discover new places, and try new things. The Competitor thrives on challenges and competition. They enjoy games, sports, and activities where they can measure their skills against others. The Director likes to organize and lead activities. They enjoy planning events, games, projects, and being in charge. The next personality is the Collector. They find joy in gathering and organizing items. They love to hunt for treasures, whether they're physical objects or experiences. Another thing I thought was interesting that the original article talked about, or the original webpage, is that Collector can also be about collecting experiences. Like maybe you have a goal to travel to all the national parks, or you have a goal to travel to a certain number of countries, or see a certain sites. So the Collector doesn't just involve physical objects. The seventh play personality is the Artist/Creator. They like to express themselves through art and creativity. They enjoy making things, whether it's drawing, painting, crafting, or other creative pursuits. And another example Stuart Brown gave in the original webpage was talking about Steve Jobs being innovative in the way that, Steve Jobs in the way that he made Apple computers. At that time, making them both like pretty, like physically appealing, but also functional. And the last play personality is the storyteller. So they love to tell and listen to stories. They enjoy reading, writing, or sharing tales that captivate and entertain. So those are the different personalities. And again, if you want to follow along, this link is in the description as well. So that leads me to my first discussion question. Oh no. And that is, what does play look like for you? And which of the following play personalities that we went over do you think that you most resonate with? I'll give you guys some time to answer. But all right, Amy said, it only started about 24 minutes, but it cleared until a little cackly sounding. Around 14 minutes. Okay, well, if anybody else is experiencing it, let me know. It still says I have excellent connection when I checked, so let me know if anybody else is experiencing it, and then I can maybe, I don't know, we'll troubleshoot some things. B says, are these set personalities, or can everyone be interested in all or some? I love being creative, but also storytelling, and some others resonate with me. Yes, so in the research or in the webpage, they kind of go into more detail about typically people will have one or two predominant personalities, but you can share traits and attributes to various ones. So, as you guys are kind of typing about which play personalities stand out to you, I want to tell you a little bit about my play personalities. So I would say I really resonated with the explorer, surprisingly, or maybe not surprisingly, but the idea of not necessarily exploring new places, although I do enjoy that here and there, but the idea of exploring new ideas. So for example, these deep dives, and conducting the research and finding the sources and learning more about topics that I'm interested in. I definitely think that's a way that I express play. And I also think, like B said, one of the play personalities that I resonated with, or I think is one of the first ways that play as a kid. And I definitely think I've had a little bit of a challenging time getting back to this play personality because of some struggles I've had with mental health and also perfectionism. Perfectionism is not, is not necessarily about high achievement, but perfectionism is actually rooted in a lot of other complex emotions and feelings. So, yeah. But I was surprised to see that it resonated with the Explorer. I also love the Joker. If you guys come to my streams, y'all know we love to laugh and have a good time. And definitely the artist creator, but it's something I struggle to go to because of just, some mental health struggles and things like that. Let's see. Oh, Chunky says you hear a ton of static. Wait, now it's fixed. The sound cackled just now. It got fixed right away. Okay, that is very strange. Hold on. Oh my goodness. Let's see. Go to my dashboard. It still says excellent connection. Like, I'm not sure what's happening. Kiki. Hello, Kiki. Kiki says the artist storyteller on my end. Amy says explorer, artist, storyteller, collector. Oh, so you have many of them. Okay, I'm not sure. Like, I don't really know what the issue is. I don't know. You guys. Kiki says, I think the sound issues are from active noise cancellation. But that would be through, like, people's headphones, So I'm a little bit confused of why it's happening on my stream. Oh my god. This is not the time for my stream to be, you know, what's the word? Acting up. I don't know. If it's too distracting at any point, like if it's interrupting your guys' experience, please just let me know. Maybe we'll restart stream. I'm not sure. But this is frustrating. Kiki says, your connection is good. Turn off ANC stuff and manually adjust your mic, my guess. I don't have active noise canceling, though. Like, I don't have active noise canceling. Hold on. Let me see. Brief intermission. Like, I have never adjusted any settings on my microphone. Let's see. Sorry, guys. Oh my goodness, okay. This doesn't help me. This little Google help page does not help me at all. Okay, I'm not sure what is happening, y'all. It's not bad. I just know some creators like their sound clean. Yeah, like that's frustrating. Like I don't know like what it's doing. Hold on. Let me go to BRB real fast. Let me see if maybe I can figure this out. I'll just do like a couple minutes and then we'll get back to this because I don't want to run too long. Sorry, you guys. All right, you guys, I replugged in my microphone. I don't know if that was the issue. I was trying to like listen back to see if I could, if that's helping. Let me know if the static is still happening. Let's see. Hold on, there's like a delay with my live stream, so I'm trying to like get back to where it is. You guys, I think that sounds better. Amy says it sounds way better. Okay, I think I just had to replug in. Maybe like my mic cable was loose or something. But I was listening back to kind of see like what the sound is you guys were hearing, and I think that's it. Okay, I think we're good now. Anybody else concur? Oh my god, and this sun is bothering me so much. I wish, the thing is, there's a window up here and there's no shades on this window, so there's nothing I can do to make the sun not do this. But anyway, okay. Let me see. Sounds good. Kiki says sounds good. Okay, perfect. All right, let's get back into it. Thank you guys for bearing with me. Oh, let me mute myself again. Let me get back and see. Well, we can get back to the presentation now. Alrighty. So, yes, we talked about play personalities. I shared a little bit about my personal play personalities. And now we're going to get into our next agenda point is the topic of privilege and inequity and this idea of who is allowed to play. So between the original essay and the conversation we had here, we've established that play is not only crucial for a child's development, but is also vital for adult success. And when I say adult success, I don't just mean monetarily. I mean sort of in a life fulfillment type of way. And even though it shouldn't be this way, there is a cultural expectation, at least in American society, that play, fun, and leisure is less important upon adolescence. But let me know if you're from a different culture or a different country where maybe the, cultural norms are different. I would love to hear about that. However, like many things in our society, our already low tolerance for leisure that we kind of culturally accept as fact is significantly heightened when it comes to our attitude towards women and those of marginalized and intersectional identities expressing play. Kiki says the flare effect is cool. Time for window stickers. Yeah, that's actually a good idea. That is a good idea. I need to get the big ladder to get up there, though. I usually stream at night, so now I'm like, oh, I'm having all these issues streaming during the day. Glad you guys think it's cool looking. Have heaven beaming down on me. But to start this conversation about who is allowed to play, we're going to start off by reading some examples from Ruha Benjamin's 2024 book called Imagination, a Manifesto. So Ruha is a multidisciplinary scholar, writer, and educator. She's currently a professor of African American Studies at Princeton University, and her work most prominently teaches about the relationship between innovation and inequity, knowledge and power, race and citizenship, health and justice. And this book was actually recommended to me from one of my channel members when I was saying that I wanted to do a play essay. So thank you again to that channel member who recommended this book to me. I've had a great time going through Ruha's work and watching interviews with her. Her work is definitely right up my alley. So this first story, let's start with this first story. In 2015, Texas teenager Ahmed Muhammad was interrogated, suspended from school, and fingerprinted for constructing a clock inside his pencil case. He used a small circuit board, power supply, and digital display, inventively transforming the case. I need to remember to stay hydrated, y'all. Dismayingly, his teacher and principal suspected the clock of being a bomb. Through the distorting funhouse mirrors of white supremacy and anti-Muslim hatred, he was deemed guilty instead of gifted, threatening instead of talented. And so this is a prime example of persistent negative stereotypes, in this case, folks from the Middle East, or of folks who are in Muslim communities, being seen as terrorists. And these persistent negative stereotypes create harmful beliefs that impact our biases against already vulnerable members of our society. So now we're going to read another example from this imagination book. In 2013, 16-year-old Black teenager Kiera Wilmot did a science experiment mixing toilet bowl cleaner and aluminum foil in a water bottle. It caused a small explosion on school grounds, and she was immediately expelled. The Florida Assistant State Attorney charged her with 2 felonies, filed in adult court. The charges were eventually dropped as part of a diversion program that allows people facing criminal conviction to meet certain service requirements instead. However, rather than being allowed back into her honors classes, Kiera had to finish her junior year at an alternative high school, a euphemism, in this case, for a school for bad kids. There, Kiera felt intellectually uninspired. As she shared with the American Civil Liberties Union, "I'm not getting the challenge that I used to have. I don't have homework, there is no German class, and there is no orchestra." It is doubtful that Kiera would have been treated with such contempt were she not Black, because of the zero-tolerance disciplinary policies that uphold rigid rules and end up alienating and pushing out many young people. So this is our second story, and I feel like the story of Kiera really just shows that our biases and our prejudice has real world impact. First of all, Kiera should have never been expelled for doing her schoolwork in the first place, because looking more into the story, because I was interested in hearing more details, the experiment that she did that caused that small explosion was actually for a volcano. Now, many of us have heard of, the classic volcano science fair project. I'm not sure if it was specifically for a science fair, but it was for science class. And she was initially trying to make smoke, but it ended up exploding. Which, honestly, if you ask me, volcanoes explode. So, in my opinion, she should have gotten A. She went above and beyond. But, how dare she do her science work in science class and get expelled? This is just a prime example of how grace and benefit of the doubt is granted to some kids, but not others. Whoops. So, we typically discuss social inequity in terms of violence, such as police brutality and hate crimes, but social inequity is also prevalent in discriminatory practices that affect our well-being and sense of belonging. So, the subtext of both of these stories, what happened to Kiera Ahmed, is this. Some people are awarded for play, while others are criticized and punished for it. Those criticized are more likely to be Black or brown. So, of these teenagers, honestly, Kiera and Ahmed sound like they could be the creator, artist, personality type, or maybe even the explorer of how inventive they were, with Ahmed making a functioning clock and Kiera making a functioning volcano. And as we discussed earlier, healthy play habits have a direct impact on our social and emotional health. Play is definitely a form of self-care. So with that being said, what type of messages is that communicating if some people are being punished for being creative and innovative, like Kiera and Ahmed, or being playful in another form or fashion? What impact do you think that this has? What inadvertent messages is this communicating? And let me read some comments. Amy says, in my culture today, some of the more traditional people have their littles say goodbye to toys. Not in that kind of home life, so it didn't happen for me or my kids. Oh, so in your culture, it's more common for kids to kind of not, have a stage where they're kind of getting rid of toys. That's interesting. I put in traditional in quotes because often people just make things up in native communities or borrow from other tribal people's traditions. Okay, very interesting. Yes, feel free to let me know what the different expectations are in your various cultures. Kiki says, I made one of those. Mine didn't even fizzle. Oh, like a volcano? Yeah. It's a very typical, school science project. So imagine being expelled for doing your science work. Criminalized learning behaviors. Yes. So, yeah, these stories, these sort of things should have never been, happening in the first place. One of the sources that I actually used in my original essay was a documentary on Netflix about the origins of Black Barbie, which is a phenomenal documentary if anybody, wants to watch it. Anyone loves a good history doc or Black history doc. And one of the people they interviewed, her name was Byrony Goods. She's an actress, a comedian, and a self-proclaimed Barbie. And she said this quote, which is pretty simple, but I think was pretty profound. And the quote is this: I thought it was a white woman thing to be adventurous. And she was explaining how her idea of play and freedom and fun being associated with whiteness is one of the reasons that she really connected to Black Barbie, seeing that Black women could be those things too. So although simple, I think this quote can speak to a larger pattern we see in society, where some people are permitted to play while others are not. So this next section we're going to talk about is various ways that play-like states, play-like behaviors are being cut short or taken from people, and starting at, young ages. So one of the factors contributing to play inequity, which I discussed in the original essay, is adultification bias. So we broke this up in two parts: parentification that occurs within a home, and adultification more generally, which occurs outside of the home. Adultification bias is treating or considering a child as if they are an adult or more mature than they actually are, often in a way that is developmentally inappropriate and harmful. And the bias part is about the fact that this is more likely to happen to Black children. So in the essay, I gave some examples from this study, Girlhood Interrupted, the Erasure of Black Girls' Childhood. And this study was conducted by the Center on Gender Justice and Opportunity by Georgetown Law from Georgetown University. And those quotes, particularly about, and some of the quotes that I included, let me pull it up here. 1354. Here we go. So these were a couple of quotes that I included. And one example I gave is how Black girls tend to get sexualized or unfairly prescribed as promiscuous or fast at young ages. And here are some examples. So in 6th grade, the school nurse asked my aunt if I was sexually active. And I was like, what? Nobody has sex. I didn't know anybody that had sex. And it was so crazy to me, and just thinking that she would never think to ask my white friend that. So this is one example. 6th grade. So that's like 12 years old, 11 or 12. This next example is from a different story who shares a similar sentiment, saying, teachers assume that the reason I'm wearing short shorts is because I want to like get all the guys. So this is somebody who is in that 13 to 17 age range. So very young. Oh, whoops. Oh, hello. Minimize. I hate when this does that. Here we go. But I wanted to follow up with some other data from that initial research. This is again from Georgetown Law, and there's a really great video about the harms of adultification and the way that this disproportionately affects Black girls specifically. And so I wanted to play a short video. And once again, my sources are in the description. So if you want to see it in full, go ahead and watch you can check it out for yourself. But I'm just going to play an excerpt about the harms of adultification bias. Sorry, actually, I'm going to play this in, let's see, I'm going to play this slightly faster just so I don't go too long. I'm going to play this in 1.25 speed. Should I put it in? Yeah, sure, I'll put it in full screen mode for y'all.
In the United States, adults view Black girls as less innocent and more adult-like than their white peers starting as young as 5 years old. This is known as adultification bias. A groundbreaking study by Georgetown Law Center on poverty and inequality found that adults believe Black girls need less nurturing, less protection, less support, and less comforting. And related studies show that Black girls are punished at a disproportionate rate in schools and the juvenile justice system. These statistics reveal an alarming reality, but do they reflect the experiences of Black girls and women? We conducted focus groups across the country to hear about their lived experiences. They told us that Black girls often face higher standards.
I feel like you cannot make mistakes as a Black girl.
All kids make mistakes, but in similar situations, Black girls are treated differently. A white girl's mistakes might be met with sympathy and understanding. But time after time, Black girls are punished instead because they are held to a more adult standard of behavior.
Everybody says, oh, you should have known better. They're not even acting like we're children.
Those different standards may be linked to harsher treatment for Black girls. We heard stories about adults holding Black girls more accountable for their actions.
During a Foursquare game at school, one of the balls hit a girl in the face. They just threw assault and battery on my record. I had to transfer to a different school, but the other school didn't want to take me because I had assault and battery on my record.
All right, so that's where I'm ending the video. But this is just a prime example. I want to kind of hone in on that one quote that one of the girls said in this voiceover about the idea that you can't make mistakes as a Black girl. And so with those examples we were talking about earlier about black girls being sexualized typically at younger ages or being prescribed promiscuous or fast as children, or if it's the idea of making a mistake, like you know, in doing a Foursquare game and you get assault and battery on your school record for accidentally hitting someone with in Foursquare. So these various examples show that these are not isolated incidents of harsher punishment and higher standards. These focus groups were conducted across the country. Another example I wanted to give about how adultification bias affects Black children disproportionately is in this video, we also talked about Tamir Rice. So Tamir Rice is a 12-year-old boy that got fatally shot by police in 2014. Basically, a brief rundown of what happened is somebody saw this kid in the park playing with a toy gun, a toy BB gun that they sell in stores. And they called police and were like, there's a boy, he seems like he's a juvenile. He's probably a juvenile. I think he's playing with a gun. I think it may be fake, but I just want to, somebody to come to make sure everything is okay. Maybe that's not exactly verbatim how the 911 call went, but basically what I do know is that the person who called 911 alerted them that it's probably juvenile and they do think the gun is fake. It looks like a toy. The cop showed up 2 seconds on the scene, shot him dead. 2 seconds. That's not even exaggeration. That's what the footage showed. Police, after they shot him dead, left him lying on the ground. They reported that he was probably a 20-year-old male when they called emergency services. These instances, like this Vox article, like this headline says, these instances of people seeing Black children as if they are adults are not isolated. And it has harmful effects. I also want to draw on this point that this is happening to outside people. Like, this isn't just non-Black people prescribing this generalization to Black kids. This idea that Black kids are naturally more adult-like is common both within and outside of the Black community, to see Black youth as less innocent and more adult-like. This is not a coincidence. I don't know if you guys have seen 12-year-olds, but 12-year-olds and 20-year-olds look very different. So this bias is definitely real, and this is not a coincidence. And some examples that I gave in the original essay was about parentification, and that could also be a way that Black parents might see their kids as more adult-like, if they, for whatever reason, one reason or another, might have to put their kid in more of a adult-like or parental-like role. And like I said, parentification is a very layered issue. Go ahead and, check out what I said in that original essay. There can be many factors such as being low income, not really having support, emotional immaturity. If you are from an immigrant family, like maybe there's different cultural expectations of kids having to step up in different ways. And so I'm not saying, I don't want to come across as if I'm solely blaming parents. And of course, that video talks more about that. But I do just want to bring that up to show that parentification is adultification within the Black community, within marginalized communities, and also outside. But that doesn't have to be the norm. We don't have to accept that as fact. So whether we're discussing how Kiera Wilmot was expelled and sent to court for conducting a science experiment in class, or the way Tamir Rice was shot dead by the police, the people who are supposed to protect them, the normalization of Black parents treating their kids like they're grown, all of these sort of incidents show clear evidence of the very limited amount of grace, leeway, and understanding we are willing to give Black kids. And actually, before I go to this slide, there's one more quote I wanted to play, and it's what I said about why adultification is harmful. So let me find it right here. White girls. Adultification is a form of dehumanization, robbing Black children of the very essence of what makes childhood distinct from all other developmental periods: innocence. Adultification contributes to a false narrative that Black youth's transgressions are intentional and malicious instead of a result of immature decision-making, a key characteristic of childhood. So, yes, I just want to end on that. Adultification is a form of dehumanization, robbing kids of that sort of childlike innocence. Amy says, do parents, I think you mean, what's the word? Not adjust, but justify their teaching styles to their children when they face such harsh rules and actions that are used by supremacy? I do think that, the way you were raised, I think typically parents are drawn to treat their kids like they were raised. I feel like that idea is common. This is, again, a very complex and layered issue, and I don't think I can get super detailed into the many reasons and ways, parents decide to parent. And of course, I'm not a parent, so I'm not here trying to give parenting advice. But I do definitely think that the way we were raised, if we were raised harshly, if we had to grow up fast, that could be a reason why they may be more likely to treat their child in a similar way. But like I said, parentification and adultification, they don't have to be the norm. We can imagine a better future for our kids. And I do think it takes somebody cognizant of if they're perpetuating something that their parents did, just because they think that's the way it is, or because they think that's actually the best way to parent their child. So those are just some of my thoughts. Hopefully that kind of answered your question. So we've briefly discussed how race-based adultification bias contributes to play inequity. So now I want to talk a little bit more about gender-based bias. And one of the questions I posed in the original essay is this: are girls, and especially girls of color, really more mature, or are we expected to be? So I want to kind of expand on this question a bit because there's a little bit more I want to say about this topic that I don't feel like I fully explained in the way that I wanted to in the original video. And so, I'm going to just use this time here to kind of expand more on how I would answer this question or why I answered the question the way that I did. So I feel like many girls, raise your hand in the comments or in the chat if you have been called so mature for your age. And I wanted to kind of get to the root of why this possibly could be. So my interpretation, the reason I think this is the case, I broke this up into two parts. First being socialization, and the second being biology. And so one of the reasons I think girls are seen as more mature or forced to grow up fast is because activities commonly seen as feminine forms of play are valued less. And so to talk about this, I'm going to use a quote from this book called The Gift of Play by Barbara Brannon, Why Don't Women Stop Playing and How to Start Again. So I put a little explanation warning on this slide because I wanted to make the note here that honestly, I don't love this book and I'm not sure, I wouldn't recommend it with the excerpts I have read. Granted, I have not read the full book. I don't think I'd recommend it, so I didn't link it. You can kind of tell, I was having a hard time in the research for this, trying to find sources that particularly focus on play research and how it relates to women, how it relates to us differently, how we perceive play differently, our different play experiences. And this is one of the closest things that I could find. I was looking at journals, I was looking at articles, books. This was linked on the National Institute for Play website, and it was the closest thing I could find to kind of honing in on this specific intersection. But it was written in 2002 by a white woman. And not to say that white women cannot, can't write, good research. But I do think that there's a lack of intersectional identities that they used. And that's very evident in some of the examples she gave in the interviews. You can tell that some of the people they interviewed were of a certain level of degree of privilege and power, or just had similar backgrounds or experiences. Maybe not everybody, but at least from the excerpts I've read, I was getting that sort of undertone. It was very, very early 2000s coded, if you know what I'm saying. So that's my little disclaimer. So I put a little exclamation point if you do go into any of the sources. I do think that this book brings up some good points, which we're going to discuss, but I do think there's a homogeneous it's homogenous, the demographic that she was interviewing. All right, so long disclaimer. But anyways, let's get into this quote. So this reads, "So often men's play is bigger, grander, and more socially honored. Women often find so much pleasure in so many more simple pursuits." And she gave some examples of simple pursuits being knitting. You can kind of see the age discrepancy of the people she was interviewing. And the other example she gave was women getting together to talk. And so knitting, to kind of bring that into more of a modern 2020 context, I would think maybe the equivalent today would be crocheting or any other crafty activity. I think getting together to talk, that is still very commonly, perceived as a way that women hang out and have fun. And another example that I would personally give that I think fits into this category is shopping. Sometimes that can be seen as a feminine form of play. So back to the quote, "Women may have play that does not have crowds standing on their feet to watch them win, or academies giving awards. They often have very, very quiet play. Because it is quiet, many may not receive the value it deserves. Quite frequently, women will not pursue their heart play because they lack the support that comes so naturally to men's play." So yeah, I think this was a good quote to kind of show that sometimes feminine forms of play may not be respected or seen in the same way that maybe common form of men's play is. For example, the stereotypes we see is like men, at the bar watching the football game or in football season, men working on cars, or driving motorcycles, things like that. Not that women can't do those things too, obviously, but the things that we typically associated more commonly with feminine or more softer, quieter forms of play, we typically see people associate these things as a waste of time. Like, why are you wasting money going to Target again? Why are you, I don't know. I'm trying to think of other examples. I think that the Target example, is one of the most prominent. Like, why are you just lollygagging, talking to your friends? Things like that. We definitely place less value on what we deem as feminine forms of play. And obviously this is rooted in misogyny. Let me see your comments. Amy says they are implicitly biased to preserve the system. Yes, talking about earlier about discipline practices with parents. B says, haha, I found out that my mom who, oh my goodness, y'all, I'm getting dehydrated. I found out that my mom, who's 65, knitted when she was 8. Very interesting. I wonder if knitting was more popular in that time generation. Yeah, probably so. So you can kind of see, the book was aging itself a little bit. B also says, if men partake in those hobbies, they are mocked, which is upsetting because there's nothing wrong with play that's labeled feminine. Yes, definitely. And I actually have another section later on in the video or later on in the presentation that talks more about the politics of feminine forms of play. So I can't wait to get to that part. But yes, one part of why I think girls are seen as more mature or maybe are expected to be more mature is because feminine forms of play aren't seen as being worth our time as much. Another component to the socialization part is because I think expectations for girls to be mothers, nurturers, and the responsible ones may prevent girls, who will eventually grow up to be women, from truly experiencing an uninterrupted, unrivaled play state. And therefore, because they're not experiencing this play as much, may be seen or labeled as more mature. And so one of the examples I briefly gave in the original essay, but wanted to talk a little bit more about here, is the term eldest daughter syndrome and this phenomena on social media. And so I have a video that explains what eldest daughter syndrome is. And I'm just going to play a short excerpt of it, and then we will discuss.
Nice. Eldest daughter syndrome, or EDS, is not an official mental health diagnosis, but it's having a moment right now.
It's a term coined to describe the unique pressures and responsibilities placed onto the oldest daughter in a family.
It relates to the unfair expectations of a young firstborn girl. Things like constant caring for younger siblings and stepping up to help with most jobs around the house.
This is like having the lion's share dumped onto one child, the oldest daughter in the house.
They also say they're the ones responsible for maintaining family harmony.
We can feel like the emotional well-being of our entire family rests on our shoulders. When one of our siblings is upset, we could be expected to go to them, to offer support. And in some cases, we can even be treated like a friend of our parents. The responsibility never ends.
Eldest daughter syndrome is definitely a thing in Australia. Eldest daughters will be very anxious, very stressed. They might be struggling with a lot of guilt. They might be struggling with sleeping. Sometimes eldest daughters might feel like they don't want to have a second family because they feel like they were already the third parent and they've raised their family.
The excessive burdens of EDS are now thought to stifle self-growth, steal childhoods, and can lead to anxiety and resentment later in life.
When you look back, nobody's really looking out for you.
I think the reason that oldest daughters are always kind of a little bit unhinged is because once they hit a certain age, they come into this realization that like, oh, I never was a kid. I never got to be a kid.
The role model, the family therapist, the caregiver, people depend on me. Labeled as a natural born leader, they place on me a crown and I can't take it off. I can't say no.
It's not a mental health condition because it's more of a social expectation. Often girls are socialized into doing more tasks that are considered female, but we need to really undo this thinking that chores are feminine or masculine because these are basic life skills that all people should be able to do.
So first of all, I want to snap to that last quote. Chores, domestic tasks should not be seen as feminine. These are life skills. If you are an adult and can't do your laundry, like, I'm sorry. Like, if you don't know how to cook one thing, like, these are life skills. Amy says, some of that labeling is odd. Yeah, like the gendering of hobbies and stuff like that. Yeah, so we'll talk about that later, but I definitely agree. So one note I did want to give about this video is that they said that the eldest daughter refers to the firstborn girl, but I also want to say that eldest daughter syndrome, or this idea, can apply to whichever is the oldest girl. So even if there are other siblings, if you are the eldest daughter, some of these attributes could apply to you or resonate with you. And that's largely due to how girls are typically socialized, like this video states. So for example, like, I am not the firstborn in my family, but I'm the only girl. So I have all brothers. I have 2 brothers. So eldest daughter syndrome could apply to someone like me because even though I'm not the firstborn, I am the oldest daughter, or in my case, the only daughter. So I really liked that video because I liked how they talked to mental health professionals, and they included TikTok clips from people just sharing their personal, anecdotal experience. And eldest daughter syndrome is not a official mental health diagnosis, which I'm glad that they mentioned, but it is a sort of a way to encapsulate a cultural expectation, and a lot of that is rooted in how girls are socialized to be more nurturing, to be responsible, to take the high road, to look out for everybody else, and sometimes to the expense of themselves. And so I want to read this quote from that Gift of Play book that I was talking about earlier that I think touches on this well. And so here's this additional quote. For far too long, women have taken the high road of responsibility, reliability, accountability, and just plain old-fashioned endurance to keep their worlds running. On occasion, they relax, refresh, and re-energize, but usually not well or often, and not in the form that I call heart play. So that is page 13 in the prologue. And I think that is a good way to end on this section. Yeah. Our socialization, the way that girls are socialized, different from even the boys in the same family, can have different detrimental impacts if not unchecked or processed. And And yeah, and this can also, there's a lot of ties of this conversation to the parentification conversation as well. And another note that I also was kind of thinking about as I was preparing this presentation is I did a video essay a while back, one of my first few video essays on the channel, about the real gamer stereotype and why for so long women were not included in that definition of gamer. And that video talked about a lot of different things, but also combining this research into it. One of the reasons we may not see women as gamers is because we often teach society that feminine forms of play are less important. So that can even include video games that we typically prescribe feminine traits, which again, doesn't make sense because games and inanimate objects are not inherently gendered. But also, we kind of teach girls that they should have other responsibilities before play. So that could also be another reason why we don't see girls typically as in the stereotype of a gamer. Even though things are changing, that is another possible component, you know? Let's see, B says, it can be hard to do life skills when you're disabled, but able-bodied people who aren't doing it based on the idea that they don't have to do it is wrong. I hope, I write this in good faith. Yeah, that's a good point also about kind of like the ableism perspective. Like say if you're in a household where there's 2 boys and a girl, and say that the girl maybe has a disability, but the other boy children that are able-bodied aren't necessarily picking up the slack because they're like, well, I don't really have to do this, even though it would be helpful on the girl. Or maybe a better analogy, maybe like a husband and wife, you know? I'm laughing because I'm thinking, I watched a video recently about, one of my favorite types of videos on YouTube are people analyzing the internet and things that happen on the internet. And somebody was talking about this TikTok video of this guy who was making this video saying how he was surprising his wife by cleaning the house after she had like back surgery. Like if cleaning your own home is like this cute surprise thing you should be doing for your wife. Like if that's not your job too. But that's a good segue because we typically use language such as boys will be boys and in some cases men will be men to excuse irresponsible or quite simply just juvenile behavior that girls and women often don't receive the same grace for. We really need to stop normalizing this idea of mediocrity in men. Like, this should not be the standard. The bare minimum should not be the standard for men. Let's keep it a buck. But the other way that I answered this question, the other way I answered this question are girls, and especially girls of color, really more mature or are we expected to be. The second part of this I answered in the video was biology, and I wanted to expand on a little bit more of what I meant. And I kind of rooted this idea, what I said in this idea that girls mature faster than boys. I know we've all heard this. So in the essay, I used like the earlier onset of puberty as the perceived maturity benchmark for girls, not because I think puberty magically makes you grown, but I think some adults who are unaware of their biases may see the physical changes in a girl's body to signify an older cognitive maturity level than what she actually presents. And so the early onset of puberty is more common for Black girls, but of course these are generalizations, so if it don't apply, let it fly. I'm a late bloomer. But, you know, this sort of fact of girls maybe hitting puberty faster, and their bodies changing maybe faster than boys' bodies, if you don't uncheck your biases around that, this may contribute to higher levels of adultification bias against girls, and especially girls of color, who typically hit puberty faster. So, yes. Did I miss anything? Oh, OB said something else. Okay, let me read your message. Haha, yes, I think I know what you're talking about. It's like when men do something that's basic and they're praised similar to men raising their children. Yeah, it's kind of giving, like, you know when like men say, oh, I'm like babysitting my kid? Like, babysitting? Like, you mean parenting? Like, that's what you're supposed to do? But hold on, you guys. Okay, so the beaming light has finally gone away, but I kind of feel like I'm kind of dark, so I'm gonna crack the window a little bit. Maybe let in a little bit more light. Hold on one second. Let me see, is that better? Let me bring up my stream. I feel like that's a little bit better. What if I go do this window as well? Yeah, that's a little bit brighter. I think that looks a little bit better. Okay. Let's go back here. Alrighty. So, the next thing I want to talk about is another extension of gender. So far in this section, I've been using very binary language when it comes to the social expectations of girls and boys and the ways in which we're socialized, but I also want to be cognizant of those who may not fit into the gender binary, or girls or boys who had a unique experience growing up because of being transgender. And so I looked at two sources to kind of explore this. The first one on the left is a 2024 Spain-based study, so the study was conducted in Spain, from the Journal of Child and Family Studies. So the research was written and conducted by 3 researchers, Lucia Gonzalez Mendiondo, Nieves Moyano, and Andrew Mayer. I hope I'm not butchering it, but I apologize if I am. And the other source I found, or I watched this documentary, was called Transhood, and is a documentary on Netflix. So the article on the left, or the journal on the left, used a qualitative approach. They analyzed 22 life stories written by parents of trans children and adolescents aged 4 to 18. 3 key periods were considered: the period before social transition, the period during social transition, and the period after social transition. And so there's one quote in particular I want to read. So, parental denial and minimization of gender identity is often justified by saying that they are very young and that it is a phase that will just pass. Sometimes this denial is carried out in a subtle way, even with nice words and sweet tones. Not only are they denied their identity, but they are also prevented from certain activities, behaviors, games, toys, clothes, accessories that they request, long for, or demand. And this is a quote from the parents, "He's just looking at the girl's clothes, and of course I denied him and forced him to try on things for a boy. He had a terrible time, and I had a terrible time with him. I understood that he was not asking for anything wrong, but it cannot be as he wanted." And so this is in relation to one of the trans girl children. And this particular quote was in the section where they talked about the period before social transition. And so one of the things I do like about this journal is they cover many different stories and perspectives, because obviously, just like any group, there is no monolithic single experience. But I do think that this was interesting to bring up because although you don't have to be trans to experience like play or toy denial, I do want to draw the attention of how this experience may be more prevalent for the trans community. So these sorts of denial experiences are likely to be distressing for young trans kids, especially if they happen frequently and for prolonged periods of time. If you're constantly being denied certain toys and play activities due to the sex that you are assigned at birth, I can see how these sorts of occurrences can prevent kids from fully being able to experience a quote-unquote normal childhood like other kids their age. And of course, this doesn't have to be the case depending on the attitude of the parents or legal guardian or family that the kid grows up in. But that could be a factor of ways that sort of a childhood is maybe interrupted or cut short for this community. Another factor that I also want to talk about was in this documentary to the right. So this documentary follows, I think, 4 or 5 trans kids and their families over the course of 4 or 5 years. And one of the reasons I liked including both of these sources is because they showed dynamic experiences, or different experiences is the word, because obviously there's no monolithic one experience. So just want to make that very clear. And if you have a different experience, or if you are a part of the trans community, feel free to let me know in the comments or in the chat what your experience is, if you feel comfortable, or if you have something additional to add or share, because this is not all all encompassing. But another factor that one of the kids in this documentary was talking about is kind of like the expectation, or the unspoken expectation for trans kids to be advocate for transgender issues. And that can kind of take away from these kids just being able to live their normal everyday lives and doing just normal things like their peers do. You know, having to be an advocate or feeling like you're supposed to be an advocate because of your identity. Or, you know, this particular child was talking about being scared to go to a protest because of potential violence that could be enacted upon them or their family, for this kid simply just wanting to live their life. And so the end of the documentary, this kid kind of came into the realization that she wants to draw back from advocacy work so that they can just live their regular lives and be a kid. And so that sort of unspoken expectation to be the representative of your community, to be an advocate, to talk about, you know, injustice or trauma, could also be a reason why some kids, some transgender kids, could feel like they've missed out on maybe typical other childhood experiences that other kids got to experience. B says, I consider myself non-binary, but I do connect with my womanhood, and since I realized my identity later in life. I believe I was socialized as a girl personally, and I would love to read more trans stories. Yeah, so this was definitely, you know, interesting to read about, and thank you, you know, for sharing your story. But yeah, so the way that we're socialized, I think, has such a big impact on the way we perceive play or what is an acceptable form of play for ourselves. And so I definitely think that's very interesting. One more example I want to give of ways that play inequity shows itself, or ways that people are cutting their childhood, having their childhood and play state being cut short, is I want to talk about this comment that I received. And it's about this idea of childhood being interrupted by choice, and particularly with this idea that kids act too grown nowadays. And so I want to thank Miss Professional Yapper for leaving this comment, and let's go ahead and read it and we'll discuss. So this commenter says, I love this video. However, it makes me fearful for the younger generation, especially with the rate of them adultifying themselves on social media. I wish there were more spaces in which a kid can be a kid. And I responded saying, that is a great point. I think it's important for us as a society to not see childhood or childlike qualities as cringe or a negative thing. Those subconscious messages definitely get passed down to the next generation. Every stage of life is crucial in its own way and deserves to be embraced fully. So, what was I gonna say? Oh my goodness. Now me drawing a blank. So, okay, this quote, again, thank you for the commenter for leaving this comment, but I do think this brings up a really interesting perspective that I didn't think about in my original essay, and that is about the concern of youth, and particularly young girls. Typically when we're talking about kids wanting to be grown, it's especially, I think, there's a unique connotation for girls adultifying themselves. But something else I did want to add to this idea is I also personally don't think that these kids who want to act grown don't just come into this conclusion, to this realization on their own. We as adults, I think, need to stop seeing the younger version of ourselves as cringe or criticizing, our child selves, and not seeing them as embarrassing because we were kids. And I don't think this is what this commenter was particularly saying, so do not take this as if I'm trying to come at this commenter. But just some observations that I've made is some of the why are kids so grown now folk are also some of the ew, doing blank is so cringe folk. This messaging definitely has an impact, and I think it is counterproductive to demonize kids we deem as grown acting, and in the same breath bully those same kids or even your own peers for activities that you may see as childlike behavior or qualities. In every generation, the kids want to be grown up. I think the difference with the young people now me sounding like I'm 40 back in my day. No, but I think the difference with this newer generation is access. We have access on how to dress more adult if we want to. We have access to the internet, to online shop. So now teenagers are shopping at stores adults shop at. We're in the era of the internet where kids and young girls can learn how to do their makeup that can look them more adult and grown like. There's not like kid or teen TV shows anymore, really. Kids are just watching adult TV shows. They're also, with the access to the internet, hearing how adults are talking about children and teens. And so I do want to bring up this point because I don't think people do not operate in a vacuum, you know? Like, people don't just come to conclusions on their own, and I think there's more of a collective responsibility as opposed to just placing the blame on kids that want to be grown. Because just speaking briefly on my own experience as somebody who is a late bloomer, some of, things that I enjoyed growing up, some people would, and even now still today, people might see as childlike or juvenile. And so I can see that if I went to school saying that I liked these things and other adults or other kids were like, ew, like, if that's for like kids, I can very much see, oh, this is not how I'm supposed to act. Let me go do what everybody else is doing. Let me go dress like the grown folks so I can fit in and not be bullied. So I do think it's important, a collective responsibility to see how we think about childhood, how we think about ourselves as children, how we talk to children and teens, and how we talk about them as well. And I'm behind on messages. Let me read some of your messages. Okay, so here's some chat messages from when we were talking about eldest daughter syndrome. Amy says, the picture with the girl holding the smaller kid is so striking. A relative shared a picture almost the same. The little girl mothers her younger sibling. Yes, definitely. Our images are definitely important, and I think even contributing to the way we're socialized, the media we see, the representation we see. This is what daughters are supposed to do. Amy says, ugh, ew, imagine babysitting your own child. I know, right? Like, you mean parenting? Ha! And Kiki says, looks good, sounds great. I know. Good. I'm glad that we got all of our technical issues wrapped up towards the beginning of stream. B says, it's sad how trick-or-treating is considered too old for teenagers who are still children. And a lot of times it's because parents or other peers. Definitely. I know the last time I went trick-or-treating was 9th grade. So I went as a freshman in high school and that was my last time. But there's definitely this idea even in middle school. It's like, oh, we don't trick-or-treat anymore. It's like, y'all, like, we need to stop, like, having this attitude about childhood, because some people be like, why are kids acting so grown? And be like, okay, well, y'all treat children terribly. Y'all talk about children terribly and how annoying they are. Like, they're kids, like, or how obnoxious. Like, we can't demonize grown acting kids in the same breath, bully those kids for acting like kids, Oh, and no problem, B. I get what you were trying to say. Yeah, so, like, being a teenager is a different life state. So not that I don't think that teenagers don't deserve to have different experiences than kids. Like, you don't treat a 16-year-old like you treat an 8-year-old. But if we have an idea that being a teenager is cringe or things like that, and we speak about teenagers or children in that way, that definitely has an impact. Let's see. All right. So this leads us to our next discussion question. So for the past like hour and a half, maybe like hour or so, because we're having some technical difficulties, we have been talking about various ways that playful states have been interrupted, discouraged, or taken from us. And this is what I'm calling play inequity. So I want to ask you guys, what factors, if any, prevent you from fully enjoying being in a play state? And just as a reminder, this is the definition of play that I pulled from the original video. So in case anybody needs a reminder of what play is. So let me know your thoughts. And actually, let me go ahead and I'll put the question back up on the screen. I just want to bring up my OBS. Okay. So, yes, let me know the answer to your question, and I will be right back. I need to fill up my water bottle. So let me know. Where's my camera? All right, it's here. Okay, bye you guys. I'll be right back. Let me know your thoughts. All right, I am back. I have refilled my water bottle, staying hydrated, and let's see what you guys are saying. For me, it's because I'm in too much pain or lack of motivation, being too exhausted. So sometimes my disability can prevent me from engaging in play activities and fully enjoying the process at times. Yeah, so I'm actually glad that you brought up the topic of disability. I didn't even kind of think of like that perspective as well, and sometimes like the limits that either being disabled or being in chronic pain, those sort of conditions can have on people. So yeah, by this question, I didn't mean like there could be factors that are we talked about in this presentation. Sorry, y'all, I'm like out of breath. I just ran up the stairs. But we could, you know, factors of play inequity don't just have to be what we talked about today. It can be other factors as well. And so I'm glad that you brought that up. But thank you for sharing. I would definitely say for me, I kind of talked about this before, like some of my struggles with perfectionism, I think contribute to me being hesitant to play, and to some of the underlying emotions that perfectionism pertains to. I also definitely relate to some components of eldest daughter syndrome and the idea of feeling like I have to be responsible, take the high road. I can never just be irresponsible or have fun or have careless fun. Like some of those expectations I've definitely internalized as well. And I also think some of the things we're talking about women's play, or what we deem as quote unquote feminine forms of play, not being seen as equally valuable as men's form of play, or what's typically deemed as masculine forms of play. Again, these are stereotypes and generalizations, but I think those are some reasons of why I'm hesitant as well. But all right, we have made it into the last section of the presentation, and we're going to be talking about inclusive play and the politics of pink. So far we have reframed adult play as a form of self-care. We've discussed play inequity across race and gender, and also expressed concerns about playful states being seen as cringe. So now I want to talk about the importance of inclusive play and also the politics of pink, or things we deem feminine play activities. This will tie into some of the things we've been talking about previously in the essay. So the kind of inspiration for this section was based in this other comment I got on that original play essay from Junie Back. I'm probably butchering that. I apologize if you're watching this, but let's go. This person left a phenomenal comment, so let's go ahead and read it. So they say, "Excellent video. We all need to embrace a bit of play even in adulthood. And I agree that people are three-dimensional beings. Just because something is stereotypically girly or boyish doesn't mean you can't have other interests outside of those things. That also means having those stereotypical interests isn't wrong either. We often treat people like they should either be one thing or the other, when in reality, more often than not, most of what we're interested in have more similarities than we'd like to admit. As a guy, my favorite color is pink, and I like watching television shows or playing video games that many would consider feminine. But I also like shows and games that are targeted towards men as well. To me, they are all fun, and I don't try to make excuses as to why I like what I like. The toxic ideas of what we consider masculine and feminine often do more harm than good, and I think that also plays a role in what we consider playful as well." So many phenomenal points. I'm so glad that they left this comment, and I want to land on that last sentence for a little bit. The ideas of what we consider masculine and feminine often do more harm than good, and impacts what we consider playful for ourselves, what we consider socially acceptable forms of play. So I want to talk a little bit about this idea of how our perception impacts our play. So I feel like gendering as a form of separation first begins in our mind before we see it in the world. And I feel like we have a lot of limiting beliefs. Like, I would challenge you guys to ask, like, what sort of limiting beliefs we have about forms of play that are socially acceptable for us due to our identity. So one of the earliest kind of forms of play that we are conditioned when we were younger is this idea of the gender toy aisles. And honestly, I do think that more stores are starting to get away from the gendering of girls' toys and boys' toys. But honestly, in my perception, I still think that these aisles are gendered, even if they don't explicitly say girls and boys. Like, I was in Target. I went to a couple Targets and Walmarts to look at the toy section recently. And I feel like even without the distinctive marking, you can still tell what is for the girls, or what is intended for the girls and what's intended for the boys. But that's just my perspective. But yes, I think this idea of what we deem as socially acceptable forms of play for ourselves first begins very young with things like segregated toy aisles. But the same way that toy aisles are segregated into pink and blue, we can unconsciously segregate leisure activities in our mind. So for example, on the left here, I put the stock image of what we might see a girl group going to do for fun on a weekend. Going to brunch, having a good, yap session, catching up. And on the contrary, we see this group of guys at a sports bar watching the game with their beer. So these sorts of leisure activities, even though we may not be going to pink and blue toy aisles anymore, we can still have this idea of what gendered forms of play look like. I do also want to mention that nobody is forcing you to do anything you're not interested in. Like, if you do not want to watch certain shows or play certain games or do certain activities, nobody is asking you to metaphorically, say, play with Barbies or play with trucks, so to speak, if you don't want to. But what I am offering you is to think critically about whether or not we're holding ourselves back from fully enjoying being in a play state that is true to us simply because of the outside opinion of what is an acceptable form of play for us. So the same way that toy aisles are segregated to pink and blue, we can unconsciously segregate these sorts of leisure activities in our mind. And so I want to start this sort of breakdown with what I'm calling pink perception, because I think this idea of segregated leisure activities really is rooted in misogyny. And there's a specific connotation of leisure activities and attributes associated with women are less important, less valuable, and things coded in pink really just they evoke a strong reaction, whether good or bad. And so I wanted to get to the root of where this sort of gendering comes from. And I think, our perception of gender, I do think really starts with patriarchal beliefs or misogynistic beliefs, because where we see stuff associated with men on top and stuff associated with women on bottom. Because even if you think about it, the way that we perceive girls playing with boy activities or doing boy type things has in some ways has a positive connotation, where it's like, oh, you are breaking the gender norms. Like a girl playing sports, like remember, like that used to be like a thing, or a girl playing video games, like that's like a feminist thing to do. But if you see a boy playing with girl toys, it's like, oh hell no. We have a very strong reaction of the opposite of that. And so I wanted to get to the root of this idea. So I did a little bit of research, and we're going to be talking about a brief American history of the gendering of the colors pink and blue. So this history is based on two sources, and they're linked in the description. One from a CNN article and another one from a PBS video on one of PBS's YouTube channels. So here we go. And of course, I'm going to give the emphasis again, this is an American history. Different colors are perceived differently in different countries. All right. So in the 18th century, the colors pink and blue were seen as genderless. Babies, no matter the gender, were dressed in white, as we can see here on the far left. The sources that I am using state different years when the gendering of colors began, but the reason behind them remains consistent. So for the sake of argument, we're going to say that the gendering of pink and blue gently began in the 19th century. It was more solidified to our current interpretations and perceptions of these colors by the 20th century. Originally, pink was seen as more of a masculine color, since it is a lighter shade of red. Red was seen as a strong color, representing military uniforms and manliness, while blue was seen as a soft and innocent color, more suitable for girls. During the rise of industrialization, which made magenta dyes more accessible to the working class, brighter shades of pink were seen as promiscuous, since the color was often associated with sex workers and even lingerie. In the mid-19th century, the color pink was also used as a shaming tactic by Nazis, who would use pink triangles to identify who they considered sexual criminals. And this consisted of gay men, bisexual men, and transgender women. And they would prescribe them with these pink triangles before sending them off to concentration camps. In the early 20th century, many department stores put out surveys asking customers which color they considered more suitable for girls and boys. And the survey results were very split on whether blue or pink won out. And those stores used that data to market children's clothes on what they thought their parents would buy. So as you can see on the far right, this is a screenshot from an article from Time. I think it was in the early 1920s, so about a century ago, about 100 years ago. And these are surveys from various department stores: Best & Co., Macy's, Franklin Simon, Hal's, or Hallie's? I don't have that department store near me. Marshall Field, Bullock's, and Filene's. Filenes. But anyways, as you can see, these various department stores have very split decisions on what their consumer base said was more suitable for boys and girls. Best & Co. said boys were more suitable in pink, and girls, blue was more suitable for girls. Macy's said the opposite, that blue should be for boys and pink should be for girls. But as you can see, it's very split. Like, there's really not a broad consensus about which is better or which is more suitable for which gender. But by the late 20th century, particularly in the 80s, with the development of better ultrasound technology, stores used this innovation as a way to market nursery and baby items to parents who could now shop specifically for a boy or a girl. And so that's why I have this picture of, gender reveals and ultrasounds here. The gendering of the colors ultimately came down to capitalism and stores wanting to sell stuff to us ultimately, because if these surveys went a different way, we could have a whole different perspective on the colors pink and blue. I want to read a quote from the CNN article that I used as one of the research pieces for the history of pink. And this quote is from Valerie Steele, who is the editor of this book called Pink, The History of a Punk, Pretty, Powerful Color. Valerie was also the director of the museum at New York's Fashion Institute of Technology. They had an exhibit on pink back in 2018 when this article was originally written. And this is one of the quotes that she gave to CNN. So it reads, "All colors have complications," Steele said, "but I do think that pink is one of the most controversial ones, and one of the most divisive too. Pink has also been embraced as a color of protest and awareness for various other communities. Pink triangles, once used in concentration camps by the Nazis, became a symbol of gay activism in the 1970s. The shade has been increasingly associated with the LGBTQ community, with Steele's book now noting that in France, AIDS was sometimes referred to as the pink plague. Elsewhere, it has become internationally synonymous with the fight against breast cancer in the form of a pink ribbon. And in the US, we are actually in Breast Cancer Awareness Month." All right, sorry, y'all. I'm getting dehydrated. The quote continues to say, "In the US, female protesters have been wearing pink to signify ownership of their sexual, reproductive, and social rights. Pink is going through a generational shift," Steele said. "Society is increasingly moving away from the idea of it as a childish, over-sexualized hue. There is a shared recognition that pink can be pretty and powerful, feminine and feminist. Men are turning it too, as they did in the 18th century. We're reframing pink." So I thought that was powerful. I also wanted to give a quick correction for my original essay. And so I did bring up this image in the original essay about pink being one of the disliked colors in many countries. And I wanted to bring the correction that pink is one of the most disliked colors, specifically in America and European countries. And also, this is not a study. I said it was a study in the original video. It's more of a survey. It's definitely a survey. And I wanted to bring that up because other countries don't have the same perception of pink as Western countries do, because colors are not inherently gendered. Like, that's what we do. We prescribe meaning to colors, and socialization is a huge part of our perception and worldview. And I think a good way to sort of explain this is, even let's think about weddings. In the West, it's very common for women who get married to wear white on their wedding day. White is typically associated with like purity. I think that's like the history of it, but don't quote me on that. But in other countries, different colors mean different things. If I'm not mistaken, in East Asian countries, the color red is the color of good luck and good fortune. I'm not sure if they wear it on weddings, but I do know that like with Lunar New Year, red envelopes are typically given with money as a way to kind of wish that person like good luck and good fortune. And there's different colors mean different things in different countries. I'm sure many of you guys can leave your own comments or chat messages about what different colors mean in your culture. So I think weddings are a good way to look at this, because it's not like one color is better or not than another. Like, it's not like wearing white on your wedding is better than wearing red or wearing gold, or, you know, whatever the color means something to you. I think I just bring that up to show that our perception and where we're raised, like our culture, has a large influence in how we perceive colors. And colors are not inherently gendered. Like, that is something that we do. They're not, we do, colors aren't gendered, but they also don't have meaning. We do that as a culture in our society, and it can change at any point, you know? But the reason I went through this whole history of pink is because I do want to draw the parallel of our gendered perception of pink with our gendered perception of play. And honestly, our perception is, like I said, subjective, because it can vary based on where you're from and the cultural norms from where you're from. We can use the color pink as a synonym for all the activities we deem feminine or girly. If you want to use a video game example, we can talk about how Animal Crossing can be seen as like a feminine game, or even The Sims, or let's say Dress to Impress. That game has been everywhere recently. Some other leisure activities we may prescribe with feminine traits or feminine forms of play are things like going to brunch or going shopping, going to the mall, just sitting to chat, watching, let's say, reality TV or romantic comedies. There's so many, beyond the colors pink, the color pink, there's so many different examples of things in our society we associate with feminine attributes. And the way in the same way we perceive pink as a gendered color, we can perceive these attributes as gendered colors, but really that is rooted in misogyny, as we've discussed. And so I say all that to say, I want you to start thinking critically about whether or not we're holding ourselves back from fully enjoying being in a play state that is true to us because of outside perception of what is an acceptable form of play for us. So last but certainly not least, I want to hone in on this idea of how powerful of a tool play and imagination are. So I started this, essay talking about dolls and play and pink and fun. And so I kind of want to wrap this up and tell the reason why. So some of our earliest play memories can honestly reveal insights about who we are and who we're destined to become. For example, if you played with Legos as a kid, are you someone who enjoys building, maybe seeing an idea come into fruition from concept to completion? Are you kind of like a visionary in that way? If you're someone who played with dolls as a kid, do you create stories now? Are you a writer or a filmmaker? The examples are endless. But as we age, sometimes our biases and the guises in which we're socialized often determine what we deem as acceptable forms of play for ourselves. A lot about our society, or what needs to change about our society, can be revealed in children's play, including our perception of self and others. Play really has an impact on our worldview. So for example, when Ruth Handler invented Barbie back in 1959, it was in part to liberate girls from solely playing the role of a mother. Before Barbie, children's dolls sold in stores were baby dolls. And Barbie was about about girls imagining a future career for themselves, as opposed to, or in addition to, their role or a future as a parent. It was in Ruth's innovative imagination that we saw a new kind of play being marketed to young girls. And even if you go into stores today, I went into Target when I was doing research for my original essay, and their whole section on Barbie, the headline underneath Barbie is "You can be anything." And that's not new or anything like that. I think that's always been kind of like the headline, but it all starts with one person seeing a gap in our society and seeing something that needs to be changed. Like, hey, girls shouldn't just be playing with baby dolls and just be pretending to be mothers. They can be career women too. On the flip side, Carter Bryant, who created the Bratz fashion doll line in 2001, did so to cater to contemporary edgy styles that were popular in the early 2000s. And he also created this doll that appealed to a slightly older demographic. The dolls also were multicultural off the jump, so he noticed this gap that was in the fashion doll market, and it was in his imagination of what could be possible, for girls to see a younger teen group of girls embodying girl power. It was in his imagination. He saw that important, that lack, and created something that would resonate with so many girls, women, boys too, of the time. Another example I came across about how children's play can reflect our society is when the Black Barbie documentary talked about psychologists Kenneth and Mamie Clark's famous 1940s doll test. So the test consisted of the couple asking a focus group of Black children questions about two sets of baby dolls dressed alike. One was a Black baby doll and the other one was a white baby doll. And the questions they asked were as follows. Give me the doll that you want to play with. Give me the doll that is a nice doll. Give me a doll that looks bad. Give me the doll that looks like that is a nice color. Give me the doll that looks like a white child. Give me the doll that looks like a colored child. Give me the doll that looks like a Negro child. And give me the doll that looks like you. The majority of the Black kids shows favoritism to the white doll over the Black one. And not to mention that Black baby dolls were not even available in stores at the time that they conducted this experiment in the 40s. So to do this study, they had to paint a white baby doll brown, which I feel like tells you as much as you need to know about why this research was important. The Clarks even stated that during some of the last questions, some of the children didn't want to face the fact, like they were crying at the fact that they attributed all these negative qualities to the brown baby doll that looked more like them, that resembled them. It hit those children in a different way. And that's just so heartbreaking. But the Clark's doll test went on to become one of the most convincing pieces of evidence for the Supreme Court to rule school segregation as unconstitutional in the Brown versus Board of Education case. The Clarks' focus on the way segregation affected the way Black kids saw themselves, the self-esteem component, was literally in the highest court of the land at the time. And various sources have different opinions on whether or not this doll test was one of the more convincing pieces of evidence or if it was more of a subliminal piece of evidence. But point in case, this doll test about how segregation impacts kids' self-view and self-esteem, it was considered in a Supreme Court case, and I think that's pretty significant. This piece of play was teaching us something deeper about our society. So the Clark doll test has been replicated and reinvented many times and in many ways since the 40s. In 2010, CNN actually did a study on the left here where they found that white kids are more likely than Black kids to prescribe whiteness with positive attributes. And the bias, even though it wasn't, never mind. I was going to say even though it wasn't as bad as in the 40s, but a little correction, the 40 study was specifically just on Black children, so no white children were considered. But in this 2010 study that CNN put on, they still found that white kids had more favoritism to whiteness, and even some Black kids were showing preferences to the lighter skin tones. Some kids were not. Some kids were like, some kids did not have that bias, but it still shows that we have issues with the way we deem whiteness as better and more pure. That was just evident in this study. And also on the right, Amira Safir. I forgot to check how to pronounce her last name. But Amira, who is an assistant professor of child and adolescent studies at the University of California, State Fullerton, conducted a study with a focus group of current children, so children in 2020, asking them how they felt about Barbie dolls with varying characteristics. So the characteristics included varying hair color, skin color, body type, and occupation. She asked questions like, which doll do you like the most and why? And also she asked questions like, which one are you most likely to play with? And Amira found that children tended to gravitate towards dolls that had similar characteristics to their own features or people in their family. However, they also understood that classic white, blonde-haired, blue-eyed Barbie dolls are considered normal, and the other types of Barbies came along much later. And the most profound thing, that quote that she said was this: they can see that this hierarchy exists, even in the toys that they play with. And so that led me to question this. If elements of play, such as dolls, can be such key components to identity, self-esteem, and worldview according to these studies, other forms of play can have the same capacity as well. What are we learning about society and ourselves through our play habits and the representation that we see? Play is crucial for our development, and representation is crucial for our sense of belonging. So what impact could inclusive play have on children? If we can expand our children's imagination about what play is, who it's for, what play can look like, if we can expand our children's imagination about what's possible for themselves, what reality we'd like to live in, and the world we'd like to see, how does that shape the next generation of adults and change makers? How does our current vision of play, what it is, who it's for, who it's not for, what forms of play are socially acceptable for us, how does our current vision of play impact our future? And so that is what I want to end on. Let me go to chat. B says, that's why so many adults are doll collectors. Oh, I said a lot of things about dolls, but yeah, that is a good point. Like, play is not just for kids. Dolls aren't not just only for kids, but play and dolls and definitely have such a great they reflect us. They reflect society, you know? I'm dehydrated. But anyways, this section was just to hear any final thoughts that anybody would like to share before we wrap up. The stream was running a little bit longer than I expected, but it's okay. We did have some technical difficulties, but I still think we made pretty good time. 2 hours. I think that's pretty good. B says, this was a great video essay, very informative and engaging. Thank you so much. And I appreciate you for being here, for being active in the chat. It does mean a lot to me. But yes, as we wrap up, I just want to add a little recommended reading / watching for you guys. So these are just some sources that stood out to me. If you want like a good, feel-good Black Barbie or Black History documentary, definitely recommend Black Barbie on Netflix. If you want to hear more about the play personalities, play research, and kind of the origin of everything, you can find that at the National Institute for Play. But of course, if there's anything that I talked about in this presentation, the sources are listed below. Or if there's any sources that I talked about in the original essay that you were interested in, those sources are linked in the description of that video. Hopefully that makes sense. Another thing that you guys can watch is I put a members vlog up for taking you guys behind the scenes of this video essay and how it came to be. Talked about some feelings of coming back to video essays for the first time in many years and some of the complex stuff that comes up for me. So if you're interested in more of a personal reflection from me, my members vlogs are available to my Monarch member tier. And memberships are a very direct way that you can support somebody who is a small content creator. I'm basically doing this work for free, y'all. I can barely, I'm not making videos that get thousands of views or even 1,000 views. And so I'm literally making cents and pennies. So those types of things, supporting channel memberships, have a more direct impact on me as a small creator. So ways that you can support this content, of course, like if you enjoyed, share. I think sharing is such an underestimated way that you can support your favorite content creators. This is the attention economy. And so the way that you can help, a free way you can help support your favorite creators is just think of two people. Two people you think would benefit from this conversation or appreciate this conversation or find insight in this conversation. Just press that share button and send it to them. Again, free way that you can directly support me. It has more of a direct impact as someone who's not, you know, getting crazy views. Of course, subscribe, but only if you want to watch more videos. And like I said, more direct ways that you can support small creators is with a super chat or super thanks. A few dollars just does go a long way. I do want to, like, if we keeping it a buck, I'ma just show y'all. YouTube, some of these people think if you make content, like, you getting paid, and it's not like that. This is my analytics from that original play essay. As you can see, I have made $3.73. So for those of us who are not, you know, getting crazy numbers and crazy views, like, I really am spending 30, 40, 50, or more like 40, 50 type hour weeks making this free content for you guys. And so, yes, this is a very direct way that you can support this content is with a super chat or a super sticker. So of course this is optional, but I just wanted to show that YouTubers are not rich. And so this is a very direct way that you can have impact on me. And feel free, if you want to join channel memberships, you can cancel. I'm not offended, but it really does just it goes longer for us who do not do this full time. So yeah, that is all I wanted to say. Thank you again for joining me for this live discussion. We're wrapping up exactly at 3, so the 2-hour mark. Let's see, is there anything else I want to say before I head out? I think we pretty much said everything. Alrighty, so this is going to be my last live stream for a little while. The next live streams will be Life is Strange Double Exposure, so stay tuned for that. For those of you interested in gaming, I also played the first Life is Strange on the channel. But yeah, I will probably see you guys probably like November-ish when we get into Double Exposure. When I start Double Exposure, I'll start it as videos and we'll finish it as a live. But it'll be a minute until I see you guys again. So thank you so much for coming to this stream and for watching and supporting. I definitely appreciate it. And I hope to see you soon in another video. All right. Bye, you guys. Bye, everyone.